Hello, everyone. Welcome to All's Authors Books and Chit Chat with Aging and Amazing. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. I'm Marianne Sciucco, a founder and manager of All's Authors, the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. And I'm the author of Blue Hydrangeas and Alzheimer's Love Story. I do want to mention that this year we are celebrating 10 years since we started promoting authors of books on Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience. And we're really excited about that. I'd like to introduce some of the members of our team who are with us today. Christy Byrne Yates, who is the author of Building a Legacy of Love, Thriving in the Sandwich Generation. She is my podcast co-host and producer and co-moderating this event. And we also have Vicki Tapia, a founder of All's Authors and the author of Somebody Stole My Iron, a family memoir of dementia. Hi, Christy and Vicki. Thank you for coming and supporting our podcast and our YouTube channel and our Books and Chit Chat. Today, we have two authors, Peter Berry, who was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's at the age of 50, and his friend, Deb Bunt, who met Peter after his diagnosis and quickly became not only his cycling buddy, but the author of his story. Together, they have published two books, Slow Puncture, Living Well with Dementia, which tells of a year in Peter's life post-diagnosis, and Musings from My Dementia Fog, which shares much of the wisdom Deb has gleaned from Peter about not only life with dementia, but life in general. They are in Suffolk, England, and are two of my favorite people. We had the privilege of having a delightful lunch together in England recently when I visited my daughter, who also lives in Suffolk. We rarely get to meet our authors in person, so this was pretty special. Peter and Deb travel all over the United Kingdom, sharing Peter's story and advocating for dementia causes. They have much to teach us. Welcome to Books and Chit Chat, Peter and Deb.
Hello, everybody, and it's great to be here from what should be sunny Suffolk, but it's not. It's a bit cloudy Suffolk at the moment.
Oh, that's too bad. So, Peter, we're going to start with you and have you tell us a little bit about your dementia journey. I think I got it right. You were age 50, is that right, when you got your diagnosis?
That's right, yes. At the age of 50, I was diagnosed. I ran a successful business, timber business or lumber business, employed 30-something people, and we were doing okay. A little pointer, I actually inherited the business off my father, who, funny enough, also had Alzheimer's. He was diagnosed later on in life, and he got so that he couldn't run the business, so I then took the business off him. But he lived with Alzheimer's for 25 years, and he lived extremely well with Alzheimer's. And I never thought at that time, being with him and what I learnt from his condition, would then help me later on with the same, I suppose, a mirror image of what happened to him then happened to me. So, yeah.
And it's been how many years since you've been living with this? Maybe 7 or 8?
10. Yeah, I'm 60 now, so
Oh,
10
so
years.
it's been 10. Okay, wow,
Yeah.
that's a long time.
Yeah, but I really need to beat my father's record of 25.
I hope so. I hope so. And you are the poster boy for living well with dementia.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you are an example to so many people. And I know that you didn't always feel that way in the beginning. You were very despondent upon your diagnosis and may have even tried some extreme measures. If you want to talk about that, that would, I think, enlighten a few people.
It seems to be a bit of a pattern, really. People get diagnosed with a form of dementia, Alzheimer's, and then there's this depression that follows afterwards. And that's exactly what happened to me. And it was not so much because of me, it was because of the diagnosis process that actually planted that seed and made that year of, I suppose, hell for me and my family. I I had this idea that dementia was going to take everything away from me because I'd been told that by a professional. And let's face it, what do we know? And we listen to what other people know, professionals in their field, because they know more than us, apparently. So that's where we were. Two suicide attempts. Life was not very good. I'd lost my business and many other things as a result of dementia. But it was at that lowest point that I come to realize that nobody was helping us and us as a family. And that's what the diagnosis was. It was for us, not for me. And I thought to myself, how many other people are going through this process that I was going through? And I could actually help people to understand what's going on because I knew, because I was at that place. So I had first-hand experience of what it was like. And that was the key thing that actually gave me some, I suppose, some inspiration, some hope, a sense of purpose, a sense of being. And since dementia had taken so much away from me, it was then my chance to have a sense of worth. I could actually maybe achieve something. So then that's where we started, or I started thinking that maybe I could help others to stop other people from going down this road of depression and show people that life wasn't over with dementia. It was just going to be very different. If we and the people around us embraced different, then it's not a bad thing. And I also come to realize that I wasn't at fault. It wasn't my fault that I had dementia. It wasn't my fault that things had gone wrong. And it wasn't up to me to change who I was and change the direction I was going, but it was up to other people to understand what was happening to me and help me move forward. So then came the thought of educating others about what dementia is about. The people with dementia, they are what they are and they can't be changed. We don't expect somebody with no legs to get up and walk and carry 2 bags of shopping. We assist them. We adapt our lives to fit in with that person. And that's what dementia is all about. Adapting everybody around us, adapting the best they can to fit in with us. And that's not complicated to do that. So there we are. I've probably run on a bit there, haven't I?
Well, it was good. It was good running on.
That was very enlightening. Thank you for sharing that. And it's a wonderful perspective. And that's something that we need to make sure people really hear and listen to. So you talk about educating people, and you certainly do that now through the books and in your touring and on all of your events. But I think, can you maybe tell us about one of your first experiences was working in that restaurant?
Oh gosh, yes. The restaurant that makes
mistakes.
A long while ago now. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there was 14 people with dementia. There might have been 16, but they're around about that number. And the Channel 4, I think it was, they had got these people together and we all had different types of dementia and it affected people in different ways. And the whole idea was to get people to, I suppose, revert back to their strengths in life. So let's just say that the person who worked in the high school canteen doing cooking, they could still cook in a kitchen. I ran a business, so I could sort of, to a degree, help manage people a little bit. Some people had difficulty with their communication, but they could still do other things. So it was having this sense of worth, this sense of purpose, and I think showing businesses that people with dementia still had a lot to give with the right support. Now, support is a very key thing. If we support people with dementia in the right way, care is a very long way down that road. If we don't support people in the early days, then care is a lot closer than we want it to be. And care seems to be the last section of your life. If you can prolong this support bit and have the care bit the shorter part, then that makes so much sense. So with the right support, we ran this restaurant in I think it was a disused fire station in Bristol, I think. And yeah, we did the cooking, we organised the menu, and we actually ran it ourselves as a going concern. And it was a great part of my life. And what that also did is the person who couldn't communicate very well, by the end of the 8 months, I think it was 8 months that we did the filming over, their communication skills got so much better because none of us were labelled with dementia. We were all just people who had a little bit of an issue going on, and we all helped each other. And it meant that everybody's skills got better. And yet, as soon as people left that environment and went and sat on their own and didn't do things for a few weeks, it all tumbled downhill again. So it was all about keeping things going, keeping active was so important. And I think that taught the film people, it taught them so much, and the general public who watched it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there was a film made of this whole experience.
Yes, there was. Yep.
Do we know where you can watch it?
Yeah, it's called The Restaurant That Makes Mistakes, and you can get it on YouTube. Is it YouTube?
I think it's
Catch Up.
YouTube and Catch Up. I know that there are clips on YouTube of The Restaurant That Makes Mistakes.
And it was produced by Channel 4.
That's right.
In the UK.
Yeah, it was a 5-week series, I think, wasn't it?
I think it was 3 in the end. But anyway,
okay, yeah.
it was interesting. It followed the people who were doing the work in the restaurant.
We had some famous people, some famous actors who came there and dined in the restaurant. And I think secretly the organisers were hoping that we were going to spill things over them or whatever. But that didn't work. That didn't happen.
See, they underestimated you.
I think they did, yeah. And I think, to be honest with you, the film crew, they had training for dementia, but they learnt so much in those 7 or 8 months that really they came to realise that the training they had was so basic, and really it just went out of the window in the first few days because they learnt so much within that time about people living with dementia.
That's fantastic. So, and then you met Deb. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, life was hell after that, I'll tell you.
Oh, for you? Yeah, for me. Do you want to?
Yeah, no, you can have a go if you like on that.
Okay, so I've been up in Suffolk for almost 7 years. I moved up with my husband, and I didn't know anybody up here. And Peter was one of the first people that I met randomly. And I didn't know anything about Alzheimer's or dementia either. But Peter, being a keen cyclist, I was a runner at the time, but I became a cyclist. We just started going on bike rides together. And I learnt about Alzheimer's and Peter's experiences, and have made a really good friend.
What that did for me, actually, and for my wife was still working 3 days a week then. And because I was on my own a lot, it wasn't good for me and it wasn't good for her because she was starting to get concerned about various elements of my life. So meeting somebody meant that I could sort of still carry on and do things. I didn't need care, and I still don't, but I needed, and we get back to that word, support. And that's what Debs did unwillingly. But also, the strange thing is I also support her because people with dementia can support friends as well as friends supporting us. Because she can't fix her bike, she can't do a puncture, I can. And again, it gives me that sense of purpose to say that, okay, I'm still needed in life. I'm not just chucked on the scrap heap. I'm not useless. I can still do things. And we all need that in life. We all need that feeling of being needed, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And we always stress that when we do our talks, that it's not me supporting Peter, it is mutual. And as he kindly says, I can't do anything technical to my bike. And I also have a dreadful sense of direction. But as Peter can never remember where we're going, and I do, it works really well because I can say we're cycling to whatever place and he says, ah, and he can get us there. So it works. There's a nice chemistry between us. We have different abilities and different talents, don't we?
I remember years ago when my father had a very poor memory when he had his Alzheimer's, and my mother wasn't physically able. She had lots of arthritis and she couldn't get about, but yet her mind was extremely sharp. My father couldn't remember, but physically he was very well. And he always said to me, he said, do you know what? He said, me and your mother, we make one very good one. So she did all the remembering and he did all the doing.
That's
And is
terrific.
that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that. And you know what? I really love that you're talking about being so much as how important being meaningful in life is, right? And like, it really touches me, Peter, and you too, Deb, about like what you can give to someone else and how that fills you up. You know, you think about giving, giving, giving as if you're losing when you're giving, but you're gaining so much more when you are engaged in a meaningful thing and giving to someone else. You get so much in return, and I think it's lovely, and I think that's what a recipe for success.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's also the sense of perspective I now have on my own life and the things I used to get stressed about. I mean, I still do get stressed. He hasn't cured me, but he's given me a sense of perspective and, let it drift, what Peter would say, if I get annoyed about something. Life is precious and you have to live it and you have to enjoy it.
You know, to sum that up in a nutshell, a diagnosis of dementia is a wrecking ball. Can we ourselves build a castle out of that rubble? That's the key thing. And I feel as though I can build something out of the mess that dementia has created. It's possible to do that. So there we are.
Okay. So the two of you are friends. You're not married. I think that sometimes people might think you're married to each other. But, I mean, you are married to other people and have your own families,
Yes.
right?
No, we're friends, and that for some people that takes a little bit of getting their head around. We are friends, and the four of us, as two couples, go out as well, so it's all perfectly fine.
And one of the things I see on your social media that is really wonderful is Deb has two grandchildren, and Peter has kind of adopted them as his own. If you see on Facebook, they have a lot of photos of him engaging with the children, and I'm sure that's delightful, Peter. That's added another benefit to you.
Children are a wonderful thing because they don't see the dementia. All they see is somebody fun or is somebody grumpy? And if you're fun, it doesn't matter whether they don't label you. They just treat you as a person who is fun. And in the same way of thinking, a dog or a cat does the same thing. You're either nice to them and they respond, or you're not and they run away. And it's exactly the same thing. So again, I can teach Deb's little grandson, or the older one of the two, I can teach him to do things, and he's happy to listen and learn. And you think, wow, that's pretty cool, because somebody's actually listening and absorbing something rather than totally ignoring you because he has dementia. So you know what, we won't talk to him. And you're out of the loop. You're not able to get in with what's going on because you're labeled with this condition. What do they know? And that's a very bad place to be. But children don't even have that on their radars, as it was.
So how did you come to write this book, Deb?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer, but I never had any success really. And when I met Peter and started to listen to him talking and you can hear how he comes up with amazing descriptions of what it's like, I was pretty well moved. That was my muse. That was the moment, I think, that triggered whatever inspiration I had. And I just said to him, let's do a book. And because he agrees with everything I say, he said, yeah. and we did. And it was published almost 5 years ago, and it's still selling. And we talked earlier about me getting things from Peter, that is one of the biggest gifts he's given me, my sort of validation of being a writer, but also helping him to share his story. So it's again, it's a reciprocal thing, but it's worked really well. And we are actually working on our second. Well, we have the poetry book, as you mentioned, but we're working on our second book at the moment. So he continues to give.
Did you want to tell us about this new book?
Well, the first book is called Slow Puncher, because obviously cycling is really important to Peter. And the second one, Peter came up with a title called Patching the Puncher. So 5 years after the first book, it's a bit of a retrospective about what we've achieved. It is also about the changes Peter's gone through and about what I've learned and how I've had to adapt. Peter earlier talked about, he can't change, other people can to support him. So what do I need to do to continue the support, given that Peter's short-term memory is a little worse? How can I continue to be there as a friend and a support? And it's also about how I've never had a lot of confidence in life and never felt particularly valued. Sorry, Martin. Martin's my husband. Sorry, Martin, I know you value me. But being published has helped that. But being published and people wanting to hear us talk has just sort of topped up my confidence levels. So it's a little bit about my own development as a person too, a bit indulgent at times. But it mentions a lot of the organisations and individuals that we've had contact with over the last 5 years, including Outs authors who've made a huge difference to our lives. So it's sort of doing the finishing touches and hoping we can get it out there soon.
That sounds great. Can you tell us a little bit about your travels and where you've gone with your story? I know you've gone far and wide.
So we've done a lot in the UK, as you say. Fairly recently, we went to Gibraltar to talk at the Gibraltar Literary Festival. And that was, I suppose, the pinnacle for me. That was amazing. So they flew us out to Gibraltar, put us up in a hotel. We did our 45-minute talk. People bought our books and they gave us a mini holiday. So that was a pretty good thing. Where else have we been? We have been to Falmouth as well, actually, Christy. You were talking about going down to Cornwall before. We've been down there. And we have been all over the UK, and we've also done a lot online. So we've talked to people in India. Obviously, we've talked to people in the US as well. We are more than happy if you want to fly us out to New York. Don't mind doing that at all. So lots of things have happened over the last 5 years, and we've talked to a lot of organisations like GPs, or they're individuals, but you know what I mean, organisations who work around dementia. I think we pretty well touched most of the organisations in the UK. So yeah, we have done a lot of stuff, and I think writing the second book has crystallised that for me and made me realise what we have done, which is a huge thing.
What I also like to think is that we have helped people and carers, people with living with dementia and carers, to live better lives as well with the time that we have. And I like to hope that I have stopped people from going down the depression route that I went down, and maybe I've given people, I haven't cured anybody from depression, but maybe I've given people the tools to not live with depression, but maybe have the tools to visit depression and then come away from it, and maybe live a little better and try and focus on their strengths and their I can do's and not their I can't do's. That's the important thing.
I think that's really so important because it's such an I don't have dementia at this point. Both my parents did, and I know that it was very isolating. And I felt isolated also as a caregiver, to know that my parents both had this dementia, and I just had so much to do. I didn't have a community to support me. But you know, what you're saying is really important, and that is that you're giving people hope for it can be different. You know, I was there. I felt that depression. I felt really deeply stuck. You talked about, you know, feeling suicidal, and I imagine that's not an uncommon response, especially at a very young age. And yet you turned it around, and look at what you guys are doing right now, and the meaningfulness that you're encountering. And I think sharing these stories, I think that's the power of something like Al's Authors, but also the power of stories, and whether it's, books and the podcast. And I love that you're out talking to other communities. And what I wanted to ask was, when you've talked to like groups like GPs, general practitioners, physicians, what's been their response? How have they responded to you?
So the online talks we've done, so
Yeah.
we talked to a group of, well, Peter really did the talk of over 200 GPs about the diagnosis process and the review process. The response to that was, wow, we need to change the way we do things. So that was really quite positive. When we've been to hospitals or care homes, I think, again, it challenges people's stereotypes. And I think it turns things upside down for a lot of people. They meet Peter and they say, well, you don't have Alzheimer's, you look perfectly okay. And just that challenge of people's perceptions is really powerful. And I think people go away quite moved. And when they can change the way things are done, they do. We recently, a year ago, we talked to a big care home in Bournemouth in the UK, and the response we got was, I've been working for 18 years in this dementia area. I know nothing. What I've learnt now is what I know, and I think that's a pretty amazing response.
I think that I often talk about my father and his experience over 25 years, and it was only the last, I would say, 8 or 9 months of his life where he really suffered with dementia. But before that, he just lived with it. And the more I think about it, I sometimes think to myself, why did Father do so well over such a long period of time? What happened? And it's because for 18 years after his diagnosis, he carried on working with me in the sawmill. I carried on seeking his advice because he'd been doing the job longer than I had, so therefore he knew more than me. That was what was in my head. And I just valued him as a person. As his memory changed, I just adapted little things to change with it. He continued to carry on to work and thrive when he wanted to. It was entirely up to him. And it was a great environment for him. And that's the bit that made him last so long. Again, we get back to this sense of worth, this having a responsibility to help others, to do things and to keep going and to get up in the mornings because I am needed. And he was needed. And that was a very important thing. And he, I think, had 10 or 11 years to live. And his diagnosis went like this. The doctor said to him, I'm afraid to say that you have Alzheimer's. And my father said, yes, okay. And they said, do you understand? Yes, he said, I perfectly understand. And do you have any concerns? And my father said, nope. He said, I'm not going to worry about it. He said, I'm going to let everybody else around me worry about it. And he then turned to me, he said, shall we have some fish and chips on the way home? I said, yes. And that was all he was. He said, I am really not. He said, I'm not going to worry about it, he said. And he carried on having this wonderful sense of humour and this rather carefree attitude to it. He said, okay, I've got Alzheimer's, but I could get knocked over by a car in the street next week. So he said, we don't worry about it. And that's just how he was. He was an incredible man, really. But anyway, there we are.
So Peter, what strikes me is that you're a unique individual in that you were, in many ways, a caregiver of someone with dementia. You had 20 years of training, and then here you are. And so I think what a beautiful way to put it together. And I think what your dad was saying sounds like a great attitude too. Like, I'm going to let everybody else worry about me. I'm going to live my life. So that's pretty awesome. Thank you.
Great. Deb, tell us about the poetry book.
So I use the word poetry loosely. No offense, Peter. There was a sort of period of 14, 15 months when at the end of a day, Peter would text me how he was feeling, what it was like for him. And I'd get these messages down my phone. And the reason I got them and not his wife was because, as ever, Peter protects Teresa, his wife, and he wanted to share how he felt. And I just thought they were quite profound and moving. And I said to him, let's put them in a book. And we did put them in a book. and they're sort of a little unique glimpse inside somebody's head who's living with Alzheimer's. I didn't edit them at all. They are literally Peter's words. I did put the odd full stop in and corrected his spelling because that's what I do. But they are words fresh from Peter's brains into his phone and into my phone. And the book, I'm going to hold it up here, is called, as you said, Walk With Me, Musing Through the Dementia Fog. And we've got some photos in it too of local scenes from Suffolk. And it's just a sort of chronological look into, again, a glimpse into Peter's mind. And they're quite raw.
The best way to describe what's happening with a very complex condition, the best way to describe that is the simplest way possible. Because in that way, people understand simple. They can read a few lines and they can get an insight into what's happening. Then they can read a few lines of the next bit and then get another idea. And by the time they finish, they put all these ideas together and they got a pretty decent picture of what's going on. If you put it in a big encyclopedia, it's not, the information is not absorbed so quickly, but short and sharp is absorbed better. And that's better, I think, anyway.
Can you read something from that book for us?
Yeah, sure. They are short. Here's some I prepared earlier. They are short. So I've printed out 3. I'll start with the first one. It's called In the Eye of the Dementia Storm. I stand in the eye of my dementia storm, trying to focus on the thoughts that circle me. Faster and faster they twist. As I reach out and grab them, they turn to dust and are gone. And yet I stand in the eye of the dementia storm, safe and calm and happy as always. Do you want another one? Was that audible? One of the things I hate doing is reading out loud. So this is really challenging for me. I'm going to be honest. So I'll do another one.
You're very good.
You did great.
So unpredictable dementia. Unpredictable dementia. Some days I walk tall, straight and strong. And other days I'm weak, bent over and old. It's like living with a wild-eyed horse. Uncontrollable, unpredictable dementia. Dementia is my nothing, and my nothing is coming towards me. Are you okay hearing all this?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I don't remember writing them.
No. Right. Actually, I wrote them for you.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll do the final one as I printed all 3 out. The final one is called Walk With Me. Walk with me in the gallery of my mind, where hang rows of pictureless frames, where blank canvases are now, were once colourful portraits where my life began. My portraits are now created every day and then brushed away with a single dementia brushstroke. You did that. Very good. Is it weird, Peter, hearing me read something you wrote and you have no knowledge of writing it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, I knew that I wrote them, but I didn't know that I wrote them. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah, it's very difficult. You know, a lot of people with dementia will. So nobody pretends to have dementia, but those with dementia will very often pretend not to have it. And it's a little bit in public. You have to be normal. You don't want to be seen as being different. And I try to explain that to people. Is like having dementia is like wearing a very shabby, tatty, dirty coat. You're out in public and everybody is pointing at you. Look at that person with that dirty coat. Don't talk to them because they've got a dirty coat or they're wearing the wrong thing or they stand out, they're not right. And so you always go out in your smart coat. You're a show person. And it takes a long while for somebody with dementia to actually wear this tatty coat, go out in public and say, you know what? This is my coat. I'm comfortable in it. And actually, I rather like it. If you don't like it, that's fine. I don't mind. I don't care. But I've got to be me and not be what you expect me to be. And that was the beauty of my father. He just was him, and he didn't expect anybody to think any different. And if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. But it's taken me a lot of years to wear this tatty coat. Does that make any sense
It
at all?
does. And curiously, there is a section in our new book called The Tatty Coat of Dementia.
Oh,
Don't give it away.
Peter's fashion section.
Because what's interesting for me is that has changed a little bit. When you first used that description of a tatty coat, you were going to wear the smart coat.
Yes, yeah.
5 years later, you're saying, you know what? If I want to go out in that tatty coat, I will. And I think that's brave and good, but it shows a change.
The reason is that I'm happy to go out in it now is because it takes so much effort now to be the showman, so much effort to be normal, if you want, and to try and act that you haven't got this condition. And that's very difficult for those around me to get to grips with, but it's also hard work for me. And because it's becoming such hard work, I'm just thinking, you know what, let it go. I can't be bothered anymore. And I'm actually finding surprisingly how accepted people are of it. And that surprises me. So there we go.
But having said that, Peter, you are still the showman.
Yes, I am. Yes.
And you can't drop it totally.
No, I can't. No, I'm a little bit addicted to trying to be normal. I think that makes sense, doesn't it?
Good enough.
You know, Peter, when I approached Deb months ago about coming here today and doing this books and chit chat, she was all for it, but she said she wasn't sure if you would be able to attend because it's late in the day for you at 7 p.m. And we didn't know until today that you were going to be up for it. So see, you've got your normal coat on today.
Yes, I have indeed, and I think that's because you know you've got to be available to educate people, but you've also got to educate people in what's actually happening. So today I have had to manage my day in order to be here today. I've had to find a solution to the problem today. So done less during the day so that I'm a little bit fired up now, sort of thing.
Well, having said that, we did have a cycle ride this morning. We did do 30 miles.
Okay.
Yeah. We did, yes.
Yeah.
You did 30 miles this morning? My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is a mere nothing, but I was conscious that Peter had to go home and have a rest, but I don't know that you ever rest, do you? You always have to be doing something. But
Yeah, well, sometimes doing something is a rest as long as you're not doing too much.
And as long as you're not doing nothing, because nothing is bad.
Nothing is very bad.
Yes.
And for people with dementia, sitting on our own doing nothing will only make the condition worse.
Yes.
Doing something all the while, resting, but doing something, whether it's a crossword or a puzzle, you're not physically doing something, but you're doing something. And that's the important thing. And I'm a great believer, and if we keep the bit from our eyebrows down healthy, that should help the bit from my eyebrows up. That's my theory. And trying to keep active mind and body is a good thing. So there we are. And eating cake as well when we're cycling. That's also a benefit. Oh,
yes.
Absolutely.
We had cake when we went out to lunch, I remember.
Keep our secrets away.
Deb, can you read a little bit from Slow Puncture?
You're really testing me.
I am. I told you we were going to do this.
Okay. So rather than read a whole chapter, I should...
No, not a whole chapter.
So the context here, because we were talking about Peter being a showman, and this was written 5 years ago. The context is he and I sitting in a coffee shop, eating cake and chatting. And this is Peter talking. Here's the thing. I look like a shop front with all sorts of gleaming, wonderful things in the window. Outside my shop, there are planters with colourful flowers and a well-maintained pathway leading to the shop. The windows are clean and shiny and the paintwork freshly applied. It looks like the sort of shop you would want to visit. It's a great shop full of exciting things to buy and look at. Like a surgeon examining his patient, Peter studies the gingerbread man for a moment and then with great precision extracts the button from its midriff and pops it into his mouth. His enjoyment is apparent and crystallized for a transient moment before it's gone forever. He continues, But in reality, once you go into my mind and start to rummage around, what you get is the rubbish in the back of the shop, untidy and messy, full of cobwebs. It really needs someone to sort through it. It's unusable goods, you see. So then we're sitting for a while, just being. The moment of serenity is broken when the man at the next table leans over and taps Peter's arm. "Peter, great to see you." "You too, my friend," replies Peter. His face instantly breaks into a huge beam. "It's been a long while." "Too long," agrees Peter. "How are you?" "Wonderful, perfect as ever." There then follows a lengthy conversation in which Peter participates enthusiastically and fully. "Who was that?" I ask when the man leaves. "Do you know what?" Peter says solemnly. "I have absolutely no idea whatsoever." And we both laugh, and I see it, that embryonic moment of sadness, gone before it has time to form fully, hidden away from the audience, to be replaced by a broad grin. Peter, the showman, at his best. Sorry.
No, that was very good. Very good.
So that was me writing about he will not give in. He will have conversations with people and he has no idea who they are. And they don't know he doesn't know. So if I can help, I always say somebody's name. But he knows so many people that I don't know everybody's name. And sometimes I get their names wrong. So I'm not really sure I'm much good anymore.
The day that we met, you drove to my daughter's house and picked us up. And it was my husband and I, and the four of us drove to the restaurant. Remember? And Peter knew where we were going. It was like his old stomping grounds. We didn't even put GPS, I don't think, did we? Or maybe we had the GPS on. Peter was the GPS, and we were in the back seat going, "We can't believe that Peter knows exactly where we're going." He had been there before, like decades ago.
Yeah, it's very strange. I have every confidence when we go out, either in the car or on the bike, we will get there because he will know. As long as I tell him where, he will get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he will invariably know somebody there too, wherever it is we go.
I seem to have built up a lot of friendships and relationships over the years that I was in business, and I think that's because if you're a warm-ish, nice person, people react to you, and they also want to be known later on to you as well, rather than just hide up and say, "Well, I'm going to steer clear of that guy." But so I think that's part of it. And in actual fact, my father was like that. People used to come and talk to him, and they used to say to me, "There's nothing wrong with Sir James, is there?" And I'd say no. And we'd walk along just a few steps, and father say, "Who on earth was that?" And of course, that'd be somebody that he knew that I didn't. And also, a very short space of time, he would have forgotten that he'd even met them. So so that was quite an insight into his little world, really. But he still smiled, he still looked good, and he still became the showman, my father did. Yeah.
Fascinating. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Peter and Deb? No, I think everybody's just amazed.
I am. I'm just sitting here thinking, that you both are bringing so much awareness, at least to me, about this whole piece of how do we approach this with as much positivity, and even some practicality. I mean, I love it that you just engaged in a conversation with somebody, even if you're not aware of who they are. Because so much of what we do when we talk to people, sometimes it's just little bits of things we're saying. It might be about the weather, it might be about this, it might be about that. But, it's engagement, and it's just something to, so those social niceties are really important, I think. And, so thank you so much for sharing all of this. It's very educational. It's really great. Thank you.
I don't want anyone to think I'm underplaying what's happening for Peter, but I'm taking my cue from Peter to be positive and to keep positive, because I think that's what you need, Peter. You don't need doom and gloom. So even if we go out just for a coffee, that social interaction of chatting to people who you might know or might not know, it doesn't matter. You're lit up like a beacon.
Yeah. It helps, and it makes a lot of difference rather than just sitting alone. And for anybody, regardless to whether dementia or not, being alone is not healthy for anybody. Regardless, I mean, it's not healthy for children, for older people, for younger people. It's just not good for us. So why, after a diagnosis of dementia, would we want to change the habits that humans have done for millennia? Why would we want to change that? And there's this thing about wrapping people with dementia in cotton wool. You can't let somebody do that because something might happen. And yes, there's a certain, I suppose, management, if you like, or support, if you like, to do things. But also, sometimes, if we do things that are a little scary, it's sometimes a little bit exciting. And also, people with dementia also need to just to have that little bit of edginess, that little bit of something different. Because, people with dementia have lived, loved, cried, laughed. We have done all the things that everybody else has done. So why should we not do them now because we've got dementia? It shouldn't be any different. You wouldn't say to somebody who has got some terminal disease like cancer, oh, you can't go out and eat that cake, you can't do this, you can't do that. Because they'd say, well, why not? I might not be here in 8 months' time, so I'm going to do all these things. So it's the same thing. Yeah.
Mm.
Right. And so I want to jump in. Yuseda, thank you for a question. She says, Peter says, dementia is a diagnosis for the whole family, but don't keep it a secret. And she asked, what are the potential benefits and challenges of sharing a dementia diagnosis openly? Great question.
Well, we'll start with the benefits. The benefits are that friends and family know what's going on, and they haven't got to make up their own ideas. They can support you if you need it. They know, well, they just know what's going on. And if people are in the loop, they can help. It's as simple as that. The negatives, some people can't deal with it in the family. Some people find it very difficult, and some people drift away. And that is how it is. It has happened in my family as well. But it doesn't just happen with dementia. That happens with all conditions, regardless to what it is, really, all serious conditions. So the one thing about it is that if you do tell people and they do stay with you, you know where you're at. And if they drift away, well, you also know where you're at. But the people that drift away, it's their loss, not yours, because they're drifting away from somebody who is probably a beautiful person who has so much to give and just wants to live their life. And if they don't want to be a part of that, then it's definitely their loss. For 12 months after my diagnosis, we kept very quiet about it as a family, and we kept quiet about it because of other people's reactions. Looking back on that, it was a very silly thing to do. What I should have done is told friends and family, because everybody was wondering, why is this happening to Peter? Why is he doing this? Why has he stopped driving? Why is the business not doing so well? Why is this? Why is that? And they were coming up with all their own ideas, which had nothing to do with my condition whatsoever. When they did know, everybody went, oh gosh, wow, well, we never knew. Why didn't you say? And I'm thinking, yeah, why didn't I say? What on earth was wrong with me? Why didn't I tell you guys? Because in actual fact, I wasted 12 months of my life, A, being depressed, and had I told everybody, maybe there'd have been a bit more support. Maybe I wouldn't have had 12 months, of the problems that I did have. So I think the positives of telling friends and family and talking about it definitely outweigh the negatives. Definitely, without any shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great question. Thank you, Yuseda. And I feel like what you were saying about there will be some people who won't, maybe won't be able to stay the course with you, right? And it is their loss, but that leaves you room for the people who are going to be with you and work with you. And I also think you're right. I mean, I always say in the absence of communication, people make things up. And they're usually not always great. So you might as well give them the real story so they don't have that room to come up with some other catastrophic thing. And so absolutely.
Mm.
I think some of it was, I know I've heard Peter say that he was a bit embarrassed at first. Is it?
Yes, I was. That's a good point, actually. I was quite embarrassed that I had lost the ability to do all the mathematics that I did and the technical side of the work, the architecture. I designed many buildings, many roofs, and I couldn't do all of that anymore. I couldn't do any of the complex bits. And I was a little embarrassed that I had lost these abilities to read very well and to write very well and to do all these things. And I think that I was so afraid that people were going to think that I was stupid. That was the other thing, you know. Again, I sort of just didn't want to wear the tacky coat, even at the early days. Maybe if I'd worn it from the early days, maybe it would have fitted better later on.
Mm. That's a great way to put it. Any other comments or questions? We're coming up to the end of the hour. Mary Todd, did you want to say something?
Back some time ago, you mentioned the movie, and I don't know how to get into the chat either. I don't know if the name of the movie was put in the chat or if somebody could tell me. It was the restaurant something.
The restaurant that makes mistakes.
Yeah. I did put the link to it. I put a link to what's, that will take you to all the ways to find it. And when we produce this podcast and the YouTube, those links will also be in the show notes.
You can search for Peter Berry on the allsauthors.com website and find all of the posts and the events and podcasts that he's done with us in the past, because he's been a guest several times on the podcast and in a couple of panel discussions, and Deb's written for us as well. So we kind of have a lot of Peter Berry stuff on the All's Authors stuff. So you can also find the books on Amazon as well, and in all bookstores too. And I don't know, Slow Puncture is available in Kindle and paperback, but is Musings book also available in Kindle?
No, that's only hard copy, but Slow Puncture is also available as an audiobook.
Okay.
It recently was published as an audiobook, but the poetry book is only via Amazon as a hard copy.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. And Peter was also part of our poetry reading. I think the first one that we did, he submitted a video. Yeah, it was like 3 years ago. We've been doing a poetry event every year now.
Last lifetime ago.
April. So Peter participated in one of those, and I think he's might even be in our poetry. You're in our poetry anthology as well. So if you like poetry, we've got a lot of poetry at All's Authors too. All right. If there is any more questions or comments, we're going to wrap up.
Well, I do have another question.
Please go ahead.
You mentioned an audio book, Deb. How did that happen, and how does that happen?
I was really astonished. The publisher of the hard copy contacted me and said somebody wanted to make an audio out of it, and it was a publishing company called Ulverscroft, who are quite a big publishing company in the UK. And I agreed, and they sent me some clips of different actors, and they asked us to select who they wanted to be me and who they wanted to be Peter. And they just sat and recorded it. And I was astonished and thrilled, because not everybody wants to read. Sometimes people like to be read too. And they had a jolly good shot at doing Peter's Suffolk accent. So that was good. So yeah, that's also, if you go to Amazon, the audiobook is on Amazon too.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic.
And one last question in the chat from Useda. Last question. While reading the article, I noticed this powerful metaphor. Why does Peter compare cycling to a, quote, a balloon that takes me high into the sky? How does this imagery help us understand his emotional escape from dementia? Great question.
Yeah, cycling, I suppose, really is a compass that gives me direction. When I'm cycling, I am Peter the cyclist and not Peter with dementia. And flying in a balloon gives you that same thing. You're above it all. You're higher, stronger, better, and you're looking down on whatever is down there. And everything down there looks so insignificant and small and not really worth worrying about. And that's sort of what I meant. And it's an escape. So I also because dementia was something in my head and I couldn't do anything with it, I created this little thing, this dementia monster, that when I was at home, this little dementia monster sat beside me on the settee. He had a sort of pointy nose, and it was a bit drippy, and he's a bit ugly and a bit bad-tempered, and he was in control of my life. Now, when I went cycling, I left my dementia monster at home, or when I was in the balloon. So I was in control. And when I came back, I could sit there with my dementia monster and I could accept him more because I had got away from him and I had become myself. Now, if you think about this, the same thing happens with caregivers, because my wife has a dementia monster and that's me. And she needs to get away from her dementia monster in her balloon and do her own thing. And then when she comes back, her monster is a lot easier to accept for a while. So that's sort of what I meant. Yeah. Was that
I'm sitting here going, because I know you don't remember saying that.
No, I don't.
But I know somewhere in your heart, you remember saying it.
No, I don't
Or feel
remember.
it.
I don't remember saying what I talk about is how I feel in here, what it's like in here, and the only thing that I can do is pour that out so that people can understand what it's like. And when you start talking about bicycles, physical things, bicycles, balloons, people then get an idea in their heads about looking down on something, and it's small, it doesn't matter. And all of a sudden people get this idea of exactly where you're at and what you're talking about. It's just trying to simplify it and make it so that everybody can understand. And I always talk from my heart and my soul, and that's what people need to hear, really, I think. Yeah.
And you hadn't written anything prior to the dementia earlier in your life? Did you do any writing or poetry or art? Or, Peter,
Me?
did you ever do any of those things?
No, nothing at all. No, I hadn't even done any public speaking until after dementia. And the thing that I find is it's easy for me to talk about something that is happening to me every minute of the day because I'm living it. I can't talk about nuclear science because I have no idea how that works. But I can sit and talk for hours about how I'm feeling and how I want people to react and how this and how that, because it's in here and it's a physical thing for me. I'm very much an open book for that, and I want people to use that information and use me as an information overload while I've still got this information to give out. That's the important thing. I won't be able to give it out forever, so you have to take the poker while it's red hot, sort of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So any other questions or comments before we say goodbye to Peter and Deb?
I just want to say thank you for sharing your time with us. You guys are amazing, just amazing. Wow.
Well, you're very, very welcome, and thank you very much for listening. I hope I haven't droned on too long because I have got a habit of doing that.
No, not at all. We learned a lot from you, Peter.
We could listen all day. I mean, I could anyway.
I could too.
Some of us have to. You go out on a bike with him.
Oh, you're too funny. Oh boy.
Really great. Thank you so much.
Before we say goodbye, I'd like to just let you know about what's coming up next at All's Authors. We have another Books and Chit Chat planned for June 24th with one of our founders, Jean Lee, who is the author of Alzheimer's Daughter, her story of caring for two parents with Alzheimer's at the same time. It is fascinating and she is delightful. So you will enjoy meeting Jean June 24th at 2 p.m. on Eastern time. We're also doing another panel discussion on June 9th called Caring for Mothers with Dementia. And this features three of our authors who are all sons who have cared or are caring for their mother. It's Vincent Zappacosta, David Breadbenner, and Alfredo Botello, who is a new author. He will just be joining All's Authors in June, right before this. So that promises to be an enlightening discussion because a lot of the focus sometimes is on women as caregivers, but we know that there are 40% of the caregivers out there are men, and we like to put the spotlight on them at times. And we're taking a break for the summer. So in July and August, we're going to be pretty quiet. We're putting out, the usual podcast bi-monthly, and you'll get the newsletter. And we'll come back in the fall in September with a film festival. We have 4 films scheduled for you to see.
Wow.
Yeah, by our authors. And then how it works is we give you a link to watch the movie. You watch it on your own at your convenience. And then we gather together for a discussion with the creators. And we've done it before, and it's really enlightening and fun. So we look forward to doing that. You can find out everything you need to know on our website, allsauthors.com. Sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get it right in your inbox. And we hope to see you again in the future. Remember, one can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony. Thank you so much for being here.